I'm with political consultant Michael Ware. Welcome, Michael. We're glad that you're with us here at the gathering. My gosh, with an incredibly storied career that begins at the age of 19, you're invited into the White House. Help us understand, how does that work?
Yeah, so it was really providential. I was going to George Washington University at the time, and ended up being at a hotel at the same time that Barack Obama was, and I was on my way out.
No, no, wait a second. Were you at the hotel because he was coming, or was this just happenstance that you happened to be?
There was an event at the hotel, a political event that weekend that he was going to be at later. The problem is I had the wrong date. I had never been to a political convention before. And so I go to this hotel not knowing what to expect, and I'm walking around the hotel looking for where the political convention is, and finally, I'm a guy, so I don't ask for directions, so I finally asked someone for directions, and they said, oh, that doesn't start until tomorrow. And so I left the hotel in disgrace, and Barack Obama was walking in, and he hadn't announced he was running for president by that time, and so he didn't have a huge staff with him, and I met him, and about 9 months later, I was in Iowa, in Davenport, for the Iowa caucus.
What led up to even an opportunity like that coming to fruition?
I come from a civically minded, though not necessarily politically minded, but a civically minded Italian Catholic family in Buffalo, New York. And so my grandfather was very civically minded. He was head of the sewer authority union, and a beloved member of his community, and thought that we don't just live for ourselves, we actually live to serve those in the communities in which we've been planted. And so that was an ethic even before I came to faith. That was an ethic that was a part of my life. And then when I was 15, after reading the book of Romans, gave my life to Christ, and then it was a matter of, well, this changes everything. And I thought, maybe now I have to go to seminary, because that's what Christians do. You become a Christian, go to seminary, and that's the way to be a Christian. But I came to the kind of sense that actually I wanted to figure out what it meant to follow Jesus in the midst of politics, in the midst of public life. And so I went to George Washington University in D.C., and I think it was in my freshman year, ended up running into the future president of the United States, and it was just a completely providential kind of thing. It was I certainly couldn't have orchestrated it or planned on it.
Well, there's a lot of discussion out there about separation of church and state. How did you, in your own mind and heart, how did faith fall into government? How did faith fall into politics? I mean, obviously this would be an idea that you would have to wrestle with if you're going to be dealing with any president of the United States or working with the White House. Give me some sense of how that thing progressed for you.
After those first few months and first couple of years of I was ignorant on fire when I first became a Christian, and so, but after learning more, reading more, kind of realized that this is our faith is about so much more than just heading to heaven someday. That actually our faith has very real, present applications for the here and now, and that includes our politics. So there are maybe different ways in which we think about our faith in a political context, as opposed to maybe you'd set different rules for your household than you would for the federal government. But the idea that our faith is the lens through which we see and interact with every aspect of our lives was apparent to me. And I thought it was important politically for people of faith in general, for Christians to feel comfortable that your voice isn't just sort of allowed in these debates, that actually our democracy And your faith mandates that you have a voice into the public affairs of your communities. It's part of what it means in Jeremiah 29 to seek the welfare of the city in which God has placed us. Doesn't mean that we win every fight. Doesn't mean that we win on every issue. They certainly weren't winning a lot of the public debates that they were called to be a part of in Jeremiah, but they were called to show love for neighbor, not just through private interaction, but through public as well.
Now you, after a period of time, what, 3 to 4 years, decided to step outside of that office. Why did you leave? It seems to me that would be the ultimate position if someone wanted to mix politics and faith.
Yeah, and in some ways it was amazing honor to serve, and I was able to. There's nothing like writing something one day and a couple days later, it being included in the president's remarks, or there's nothing like knowing that something you wrote is in a briefing memo that the president is reading in the Oval Office. And so those kind of moments are definitely something you miss. I left for 2 reasons. So I did religious outreach for the president. My primary role in the White House was to make sure that conservative and moderate people of faith had their voices heard in policy discussions. Again, it doesn't mean that we won every time. Some would say we didn't win half the time, but it was my job to make sure that they were heard, that they couldn't be ignored, and we got some significant wins out of that. So I had very good relationships with religious leaders across the country, but we'd meet, and then there was a post meeting, and they'd meet with their staffs, and I'd have to go meet with government bureaucrats and report back, and my staff. And I really wanted to get to a place where I was the post meeting with the church, and so now I'm in a place where I'm able to work directly with Christian leaders and organizations, using the experience that I gained at the White House, where I think we all understand how drastically the cultural, political, and religious landscape has shifted in this country, even from 2008. That's something I got to see up close, and I think the hope for America is in the church. And as I talk to Christian leaders around the country, it's just a great time of uncertainty and discomfort, and so part of my role now is to help Christian leaders and organizations feel a little bit more certain about their footing, feel a little bit more sure about the path forward, and I feel like getting to a place where I'm the post meeting more often now and serving directly with the church, and for this season of my life, that's where I want to be.
From your understanding, with having served at literally the highest levels of power around some of the cultural issues that, where decisions are being made that have very far-reaching implications, what in your mind should be the stance of the Jesus community in light of so many things that are changing?
I'll raise a couple things. First is that we have to understand that we're living in a different country in which more and more often we'll start to see people in positions of power detached from or not have a great awareness of what it means to be religious. That's a completely novel thing in this country, and the implications for that are far-reaching. We no longer learn by the virtue of cultural osmosis, by being an American, what it means to be religious. And the burden is on us as Christians, as people of faith, to help others understand what that means. What is a religious conscience? What does it mean to feel like you're going to sit at the throne of judgment one day and have to answer for how you lived your life? What does that mean for the here and now? And so that would be the first thing. We need to stop taking some of the privileges and some of the assumptions that we used to be able to take for granted. We can't take them for granted anymore, and that should place an additional burden on us. The other thing I'll mention, which is just something I've been thinking about a lot lately, is talk a lot about individualism and narcissism, and I think those are two major themes in our culture that are unbiblical. I'll add a third, and they're all tied together, which is that I think we have a crisis of commitment in the nation right now. It is a crisis of commitment to institutions, a crisis of commitment to family.
Where does that come from? I mean, when you say commitment, loss of commitment, what's happening?
Well, I think it stems from philosophy of individualism, the idea that we're just sort of that there is no sort of greater binding or drive than just individual wants and needs. That it's okay to live isolated from one another, pursuing our own self-interest. And the way that is lived out is that we're seeing, I mean, there's a reason why New York Times columnist came out a couple of weeks ago saying that we need to move beyond marriage because marriage isn't working anymore. There's a reason why we're seeing denominational and church attendance, religious affiliation decline, where now we have the highest numbers of religious unaffiliation. Now, people will still say that they're spiritual, that they pursue God in their own way, but they're unwilling to put any boundaries on that. They're unwilling to actually make any commitments around that. It's just sort of, I'm on a journey, and it's okay to be on a journey for a while, but you have to be heading to a destination. Right. And in politics, we have the rise of the independents, sort of more political independence now than any time in the modern era. And what that says in a country where you have a two-party system. Now, there may be times when declaring yourself a political independent is fine, but when you have these constant political independence, what it's actually saying is that I am actually giving up one of the primary ways I can influence the direction of my country, which is investing in a political party. When you are political independent, you're actually forsaking the ability to influence our leaders through one of the main mechanisms that we can, which is influencing party platforms and party primaries and that kind of thing. And so that's a theme that I'm concerned about, and it's a theme that Christians can address through offering a countercultural witness of what commitment looks like. When you have marriages that are strong and that stand up to the pressures that people expect marriages to crack under. That is a testament to a commitment that is not just on our own power, but through God. When we say that we're going to stick in our churches, even though maybe we don't like the new music, the new kind of, maybe they switched to electric guitar, or maybe we don't like the color on the floor, but we say, well, no, I actually am in this church not just because it serves me and all of my desires, but I actually have a role to play in this community. Then that's a powerful testimony. And the public implications of that commitment are huge, just so significant.
I get the sense as well that you would have some things to say about the Christian community as it appears to the more progressive, or what some have labeled the liberal community. The rep out there doesn't look very positive.
Yeah.
How could we improve that? Not just with commitment.
Yeah.
Is there other things that you would, from your kind of consultative framework, what would you be saying to the more conservative community?
Well, first, the important thing to say is that people aren't always going to be happy with us. And sort of, right, our public engagement is not about pleasing people. It's about serving God. What's been so distressing, I think, to many of us here at the gathering, and I've heard so much about this, to many millennials, is that not that not that we've had the wrong tone for the sake of having the right tone, but actually the tone that we've had has been unchristian and uncharitable, and not winsome. And so there is no cultural circumstance that justifies unfaithfulness. And so often we get into and believe me, I'm chief among them, right? Like I'm in DC doing politics, so my opportunities to compromise on this are compounded and many. So often we, the collective we, including, we in order for us to like play out this long-term strategy of where things are going, we make short-term compromises, and that's just not how the kingdom works. That's not how it's ever worked. There's never been a circumstance where God said, well, you could forget about me this week, and next month we're gonna head off together. No, we need to be in lockstep with Jesus every step of the way. And so that's something. We don't have to be scared. We don't have to be fearful. We don't have to be hateful or attacking anybody, because we need to have a deeper understanding of our fellow neighbor and what it means to have Jesus and what it means to not have Jesus, and that'll affect us a great deal.
19 years old, go into the White House. 4 years later, you leave the White House. One might say, wow, that was a meteor. What could he do for a second act? But my sense is you've got a second, third, fourth. Where's the future going for you? What are you thinking?
So I am 3 years into marriage. I'm married to the love of my life. We went to middle school together, and
Wow.
she's just my sweetheart. So I mean, that's a big focus, is just spend a lot of time with my wife. I'm consulting, as I said, things have changed a lot since 2008. And I want to play whatever role I can to help the church navigate through where Christians are having to answer questions that we've never even been asked before in this country. And so what does that mean? I'm seeing ministries being diverted because of these sorts of cultural questions, and it's we can't be taken off our footing for too long. That's a distraction. And so doing a lot of consulting. I'm writing for the Atlantic and for Relevant, and hopefully writing a book on the value of hope in public life.
Wow.
So what is hope? Why do we need it? If we had a public hope, what would that mean for our politics, for our culture, for our families? And so I'm excited about that, because we're in a cynical time right now. Actually, David Brooks, who's here, wrote a column this week saying that talking about the fact that we can't become fatalistic. That's not the nature of this country. That's not the nature of the type of people we want to be. And I think first and foremost, Christians are not fatalistic about anything. The only thing that we're certain of is the victory on the cross, and that everything else falls underneath that. And so that's why I spend a lot of my time thinking about. I think it's important. I think people want to see someone who saw politics up close, and it's realistic but still hopeful about things. I think people stay away from thinking about these issues because they think if they really knew what was going on, that all hope would be vanquished. But I was there in the thick of things and saw some awful stuff, saw some bad people advancing some bad ideas, but I also saw great signs of hope. And that's what I try and work on now.
Well, Michael, you have had a very storied career already, and yet you are a person who lives in hope. And I just want to thank you again for dropping in and sharing with us at the gathering.
Thank you.